and Zoom.
I'm sorry, before you present your presentation, let me introduce you. Sorry, I forgot to introduce you. Professor Dr. Reevany Bustami. He's an associate professor, head of Nusantara Malay Archipelago at Center for Policy Research and International Studies, USM. He earned PhD from London School of Economics and Political Science. The field is organizational and development sociology. Her master is from University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, with the same field, sociology, and he earned his bachelor in Purdue University. The field is also sociology. Area of specialization is number one, Nusantara, or ethnic studies, organizational studies, or CSR. Three is social research philosophy and methodology, and four is transformative and future studies. Okay, yeah, you already present your PowerPoint.
Okay,
please.
I have Edward Snowden from Malang to help me here. So there you go. Okay. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we already.
Thank God. All right, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum and selamat siang, good afternoon. Wuan. We have friends from China as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let me present my santai paper on South China Seas and presenting a Nusantara maritime paradigm. I myself consider myself a Nusantara person because long time ago, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Brunei, we were part of one big continent, and after the colonizers came, and then they broke us apart, and then now we have different nations, but we do share a long history of shared heritage, shared history, shared spirituality, shared identity. Unfortunately, after the colonizers left, they remained to be successful because that broken part of us has continued on, and then through those loopholes, those chasms of colonizers, right? And we remain to be disunited in some ways. But thank God, Alhamdulillah, the regeneration effort and is happening organically and as well as by design, and we are coming together in more than one way. We were once one big religious community, spiritual community, cultural community, political, economic community, historical community, a maritime community. Now the linkages are being rebuilt slowly, and we hope that this effort of rebuilding, of regeneration, of reconnecting to ourselves, to our home, will continue on. Yeah, okay. Right. Okay, so right. I will continue on. I should be like that, right? Okay. All right. So I'll present a perspective which we call the Nusantara maritime paradigm perspective. Yeah. So let me start with some brief intro, and I think has this the complexities of South China Seas realities have been captured by the speakers, the esteemed speakers, and I probably should not delve too deep into this, but we do acknowledge, we do understand as much as we can, of course, that there are latent and sometimes overt conflicts occurring in South China Sea, more than one front, and it is a very complex kind of space. Yeah, this South China Sea, seas in fact, right, with this plural there, and in that sense, it makes it a big puzzle to be solved. It's a conundrum, right? To try to realign all the forces together in a square shape, the green with the green, the red with the red, the yellow with the yellow, and that is quite a riddle to solve. And it seems like this Rubik cube is becoming more and more complex with the coming other forces, with coming other strains of globalization, and different forms of globalization is coming in, and sometimes voluntarily, sometimes by force, sometimes through invitation, sometimes they invite themselves and all that. So we have a situation that has been well articulated by speakers before this, that is potentially explosive. It's something that can pose as a threat to the stability to the region. So it is complex. It is potentially dangerous. We play with this kind of fire in the water. So we take note, and we are cognizant of this situation, and we will need to come up with some possible set of solutions, right? And from here onwards, I will present an alternative paradigm to this whole conundrum. Let me start with what we are stuck with first, right? I begin with 1648, a treaty called the Westphalian Treaty. It's a treaty that basically recognized by historians and social scientists, political scientists, international relations experts as the treaty that brought together European nations, and eventually that is, in a way, is the birth of nation states. And nation states from here onwards are more or less defined by its borders, right? So the borders become, and the territory that the borders protect become the space of sovereignty of those nations. So the empires fight among themselves, and they come together with a series of, the Westphalian Treaty is actually a series of understandings and agreements, and they eventually became the dominant paradigm of international relations, becomes the dominant paradigm of territory, becomes the dominant paradigm of sovereignty, which eventuates in, like it or not, the World War, we can argue World War II, and eventually the United Nations, right? So we have a paradigm of relations between community that's defined by borders. And whenever the borders, the territories, the perbatasan, the sempadan in bahasa or perbatasan, they're being encroached, it is seen as a violation of sovereignty oftentimes. Get out of our waters. You have violated our waters. Get out from our waters. Right? You have violated the air of whatever country. Get out from the air. Tenggelamkan kapalnya itu. And likewise, it was happening the same way, right? And what's interesting is it continues to happen, but it's never being mentioned in the news, because if you were to take up this matter further, it become an international incident. But it continues to happen, to occur, and recur many times in our waters, right? But sad to say, the definition of migrants are born more or less. The new modern definition of migrants, the new definitions of you and I, they and us, are being defined by this Westphalian paradigm, which is a hegemony of Westphalian hegemony of thinking, hegemony of paradigm between communities, between nation states. And we in this colonized part of the world accepted we, the Nusantarans, which one define nation states quite differently from them, right? We have the Mandala system, you remember that? We came to accept them, right? And they arbitrarily draw different lines on our borders, right? The British, the Dutch, the Portuguese, the Spanish came in. So, okay, this is yours, this is mine, right? So much so that we see, you know, in northern Malaysia, Malaysia and Thailand, right? We have a line that's drawn along the river, and you see that the couples, the village is being divided, right? So we have cousins and uncles and aunties and grandpas, grandmas in the same village being divided by this British border that's called territory, right? And divide between two nations, and they divide the villages as well. And it's even sillier to imagine in Kalimantan itself, we see, you know, that you can cook in Indonesian kitchen and dine in Malaysian living room, because the house is divided along the border of Indonesia and Malaysia. Why? Because we have this smart, ingenious, super intelligent British and Dutch draw a line on the house dividing Indonesia and Malaysia. So as the same household, they cross this line, they become Indonesian, they cross this line, they become Indonesian. Cross the line, Indonesian, cross the line, Indonesian. So they can live in two countries in the one house, right? So that's the genius of the Western hegemonic Westphalian paradigm. What I like to introduce is slightly different, which is the Nusantara Maritime paradigm, right? Jadi kita ni orang Nusantara gitu, right? The Nusantara Maritime paradigm approaches and looks at the world somewhat differently, right? I like to begin the Nusantara thing with different historical roots. Mempunyai akar-akar sejarah yang berbeza-beza gitu. I'm learning my Indonesian language, so if I'm wrong, please correct me. If you look at the historical sociological perspective, right, we begin with Sumpah Palapa, Oath of Palapa, Majapahit Oath, right? Gajah Mada, the prime minister, if you will, or the prime minister of the then king, Haji Muruk, ya, said tidak akan makan yang kenyang, tidak makan tidur yang lena itu, selagi tidak bersatunya Nusantara. As long as Nusantara is not united under Gajah Mada, he will not stop. He will not eat well. He will not sleep well. And it was defined. Nusantara is defined as a space that ranges. Am I connecting?
Herlina. Herlina. Alfi, tolong di-mute dulu itu, Alfi.
Oh ya, oke.
Herlina.
Kayaknya ada Gojek di sana ada. I'm Gojek.
Sorry, Professor.
Sorry. So you are presenting. So more or less with this sumpah, with this oath of Gajah Mada in 1334, Nusantara was born. At least the term Nusantara under the concept of Gajah Mada, and that was. But if you look at the history, the Nusantara, the copper plates of Nusantara was found even in 1305. So the idea of Nusantara, the imagination of Nusantara, the imagined community of Nusantara was there even before Sumpah Palapa, and Nusantara history even extends up to the Sulu government, Sulu Sultan. At that time was not Sulu, but in the Sulu Seas. So we have the Nusantara as one of our historical roots from Sumpah Palapa. But if you go beyond history, go further behind, right? Time travel, the prehistoric seas. We can see that the Nusantara maritime paradigm, right, begins even much further, much longer than that. It began with Sunda land, or the Benua Sunda or Pentas Sunda. And you can see in the slide, right, the Sunda land was once a big continent, right? It's not divided into many parts of islands yet, except for Sulawesi, yeah. But at that time, Kalimantan, Jawa, and Sumatra, and Semenanjung, Malaya, and all that was part of a big continent, and that was in we are talking about dry land 25,000 BC, right? And that was a long time ago, and we already exist then. In fact, if you like to know the courage thing, right? One of the kesaktian, the mystical part of the courage is that it is made from not Earth technology, it's made of outer space technology too. And that technology is using asteroid metal. And then the Pandai Besi, the people who are the blacksmith of the courage, of the dagger that's originated from Nusantara, had the technology to smelt and melt and combine different metal together, and that is a superb technology. And they combine in the grace, and at that time there were many other technologies that is attributed to the people back then. And we are talking about 25,000 years ago. And in fact, there are other books that talk about this period, and it's not written by us, written by Westerners. And they say in Eden is actually in the tropics, and tropics is actually our us, right? In some ways, we are the original Aquaman, if you like to know, right? This is where we are, and we see we separate after the a series of volcanic eruptions and as well as floods. The continent, the Sunda continent, the Sunda basin broke apart, right? And we became, some of us stayed on the land and the mountains, and some of us became the people of the sea, and a lot of us travel and have stories about the sea. And this is a long time ago, right? And the whole idea of Nusantara maritime paradigm slowly evolved and emerged as a dominant paradigm of perantaus, right? And then due to the massive flooding and great majority of the people of Sunda land, when we talk about Sunda, we're not just talking about Bandung, the beautiful people of Bandung, and then Jawa Barat, right, and Sundanese and all that. We're talking about the big continent, so we are all part of this big continent, right? Of course, Bandung, Jawa Barat tetap bagian daripadanya. The people of Sundaland migrated to distant lands, up north to Taiwan and China in the north, and south to New Zealand, and the Pacific and Easter Islands in the east, as well as Madagascar in the west. In these places, they became early settlers, aka natives. So you can find, you know, the people in New Zealand who dance that kind of, they are actually ethnically, genetically related to us. Even as far as Hawaii, they are genetically related to us. So the rest remain behind and struggle with the new landscape and new ecosystem, and the experiences are even recorded in flood myth and migration folklores, right? Now, this is a professor, his name is Professor Oppenheimer. If some would know, he talks about the nomadic people and all that. So he debunked the whole out of Taiwan theory that talks about us, the Nusantara people, right, originating from Taiwan. So it's actually wrong. There are scientific facts to support of the out of Sunda land theory. So and it's especially true. You can read his book Eden in the East, right? The drowning of a continent of Southeast Asia, and there is strong DNA proof for that. And there have been extended research in it. I'm actually part of the research as well. And Oppenheimer is a scientist from Oxford University and a former visiting professor in my university here, Universiti Sains Malaysia. And his theory is based on findings from history, archaeology, oceanography, genetics, linguistics, and folklore. But his study is mainly about DNA. And he has shown that we are talking about a big part of Nusantara, including the Papuans, right? If you think Papuans are not from a different part of the world, no, they are genetically related to us, right? Only 7% of our gene pool comes from outside, right? So, and it is being traced that even the whole idea of genetic flow flows from the flows from the south to the north, not the north to the south, right? It is proven scientifically. So you can see genetic sequencing. So the whole idea of out of Taiwan that we came from Taiwan, that's wrong. Now, some of us actually traveled back from Taiwan to Nusantara, but the historical fact and scientific fact has proven that it is from Sunda land that we flow out, even to Taiwan and China and New Zealand and Hawaii and the Polynesian islands and Madagascar. So what am I talking about here? We're talking about Nusantara maritime paradigm. So we are very similar to the Mediterranean community. Mediterranean actually means media terra, which means media is middle, terra is land. And in Nusantara is a concept which is fascinating. Right? We have a concept to describe ourselves as the people in between islands. Nusa islands, Tara, Antara, between islands, right? And you look at Southeast Asia, we look at Nusantara, right? The Sulu Sea, Celebes Sea, Banda Sea, Arafura Sea, the Java Sea, Andaman Sea, South China Sea. They're all seas surrounded by land. That's a definition of Mediterranean. What does it mean? It means it's narrow access to waters. The access to water is not easy. And by implication, if you have nation borders defined by seas, you will definitely entrapping yourself into international conflict. So Nusantara did not have this Westphalian concept of sea borders, do not have the concept of territories defined, empires defined by the waters. Nusantara a long time ago had the concept of empires defined by the center, not at the border. And we look at our kampong concept, our village, right? A lot of our villages do not have fences. In fact, we roam freely from one house to another, right? Because the borders are not defined as being private, right? The public space, the commons, the shared resources, the shared space is very much part of the Nusantara maritime paradigm. And if you look at Southeast Asia, if you look at South China Sea, it is a Mediterranean kind of sea when you have all these different rocks and islands and all emerging, right? And that's why we have different claims. And why? Because we have this hegemony of Westphalian paradigm that is dominating us, that's brainwashing us, telling us that this is mine, this is yours, this is yours, it's mine, don't touch mine, this is yours, that kind of thing. This is my fish, that's not your fish, that kind of thing. So we lost the sense of Nusantara, the sense of Nusantara spirit, and then eventually we get into conflicts, right? So the Nusantara paradigm, the Antara Nusa, the Mediterranean paradigm, the Malay Archipelago, is a socio-economic perantau habitat. Why do we say perantau? Because we were not migrants. We are like dolphins swimming, roaming around the waters, oceans. The sea is our land, the land is our sea. Samudra itu tanah kita itu samudra kita. Kita bangsa bahari. Maritime society, we are maritime society. And our relation with the water is very, very, very strong. We call our home tanah airku, tanah air, right? Not just homeland, heartland, we call it tanah air. Why? Because air is very strong. It's part of us. Tanah is part of us. We understand that Zhongguo have Zhenhe or China has Zhengho, right? But in Nusantara, right, the feminist movement has started long time ago. It's not even a movement, right? Laksmana Malahayati, Panglima Perang Kerajaan Aceh, who actually led more than 100 armada of ships to drive away the Portuguese and Dutch. I mean, this is a woman admiral, in the 1500s, right? Now they're talking about affirmative action. They're concerned about this judge passed away who will fight for women's rights. Nusantarans, the Nusantara community, we love our women. We respect our women. We uphold our women. They are not just people who are our mothers, but they are pahlawan. They are warriors. They are admirals, right? And we have Hang Tuah, In Surabaya, we have Universitas Hang Tuah and all that, and it is a university. It's a university for the Navy. Hang Tuah is also Laksmana. So we have who are actually a diplomat as well. So if China has Zhen He, right, Sampokong, if you go to Semarang, you see Sampokong there, right? And in Surabaya, we also have Masjid Cheng Ho, yeah. All these emirals are also diplomats, right? And what the Nusantara maritime paradigm has is that we share our oceans. We operate from the shared prosperity paradigm. So we share our ocean. Doesn't mean that we didn't have wars between empires. We had wars between empires, but the war was not about who conquered what piece of rock in the middle of the ocean. Right? Of course, you can argue there is no oil at that time yet, right, and all that. But it was not because of that. It was because of a belief system that the ocean is a shared space. Because the belief system that borders do not define the sovereignty. It's the power at the center that defines the sovereignty, right? And that is, in a way, is part of the mandala system, and that is part of the Nusantara maritime paradigm, which is quite different from the paradigm of a Westphalian nation state, right? So the Nusantara maritime paradigm, you look, right, even in the land, right, you see, if the classic Nusantara city will not look like Kuala Lumpur or Pulau Pinang or Surabaya, where you have TP1, TP2, TP3, TP3. TP is Tunjangan Plaza, Tunjangan Plaza 1. Not enough, you have Tunjangan Plaza 2, then you have Tunjangan 3. You keep on building malls and malls and malls in Jakarta. You know, you have huge malls, right? And that's not a Nusantara model. A good Nusantara model before colonization, I think the closest would be like Jogja. See, the Jogja has a different concept of property. You know, the kraton, and around the kraton itself, there's this komunitas, pengabdian. Yeah? So you can live in that community, but you do not own that property. UGM, Universitas Gajah Mada, the land is owned by the king, the sultan, right? But it can be used for you know. In fact, if you look at UGM, originally it's in the kraton, in the palace itself, and the whole idea of non-privatized land, meaning land that's being shared, commons, public goods, right, is a very common concept. This shared resource, shared prosperity is a very common concept in Nusantara. And the Nusantara maritime paradigm promotes this idea of sharedness. Even the apa namanya, kitchen, you can go to the kraton's kitchen, the palace kitchen, and have drinks and order food over there, right? I've been there many times, not too many times. I like to go more, like a few times, right? And I enjoy being there. And there are times even the king comes down and visits the citizens, and then there's the beauty of it, right? There's the beauty of Nusantara maritime paradigm. And if you look at Putrajaya, the new city in Malaysia, the administrative center of Malaysia, right? The concept of common space is being recreated. Right? And it's not easy to recreate that because we have colonized ourselves, and it's hard to decolonize ourselves, right? And I'm concerned that Nusantara will continue to be colonized to the extent that the Nusantara spirit and Nusantara paradigm eventually perish. Next. Before I continue on, and my simple message, right, and the takeaway from my presentation is this: 10 points. And our message to the world: Nusantara is our home, our tanah air. We are bangsa bahari, seafarers who roam and guard the waters. Number 2. Number 3, we have been here for a long time, even before history. Number 4, we duly respect and recognize giants out there. There's giants in the north, giants in the south, giants in the west, giants in the east, and they're combining together and in different ways, right? And we kindly invite them, enter our home, and we will welcome you. And that's Nusantara spirit. We welcome our guests. please kindly do not occupy our home. I repeat that. Please kindly do not occupy our home. Right? We are not giants like you all, but please do not occupy our home. We are willing to share our prosperity and hospitality. Point number 7. We are willing to share our prosperity and hospitality. And if you go to Indonesia, they are so hospitable people. It's amazing. I love the hospitality there. I remember I said, this is like so special. You know, I'm afraid that one day we will lose that kind of warmth, that kind of hospitality, that kind of spirit. Right. Number 8. We just want to be independent and not being colonized again and again. Enough. Malaysia has been colonized by the Portuguese, and then the Dutch, and then the British, and then the Japanese, and then the British again. Enough. We do not want to be colonized again, please. Right? So number 9, we are neighbors. Let's live peacefully. Let's live with peace and dignity. Dear giants out there. Number 10, and that is the creed, our Nusantara Maritime.